Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Guthrie, and I'm thrilled to be with you all, sharing knowledge on one of my favorite topics, actionable reporting. I couldn't be more pleased Zebra BI has created this global community of like-minded professionals who come together to collaborate and learn from each other. In my previous role with Microsoft as a program manager, I developed strategic reporting that enabled workload leaders to make data-driven decisions from financial metrics. I've recently moved to the customer success side of the business, helping companies in their digital transformation journey by aligning Microsoft resources in support of their business objectives. The key to actionable reporting is understanding your business from the viewpoint of your customers, your report users. What's top of mind for them is how they're measured, and those business drivers are your key performance indicators, or KPIs. As designers, we must empathize with our customers to appreciate they don't have time to sift through details and data. They need to know what decisions to make in driving the business forward. What I love about Zebra BI's philosophy and approach is they keep reporting simple and scalable to help tell the story and guide the user's eyes to what they need to know. Today, I'd like to take you through the development lifecycle of one of my most recent projects, gross margin reporting in Power BI. The reports I'm presenting today have the form and function of the dashboards I redesigned based on Zebra BI's methodology and their technical specs provided in the Resource Hub. The data itself has, of course, been thoroughly anonymized for confidentiality. So give me a moment here while I share my screen. Okay. Basically, the idea here was to use Power BI and DAX to implement an allocation logic on large data sets to gain insight to profitability at a more granular level. We needed to understand historical data for both revenue and cost at a level our teams could manage and use these insights to create action plans to cover any gaps to target. We had to break down any variances to plan and quickly see which workloads were impacting the financials and on what line of the profit and loss statement. Sound familiar? Pretty much every business has this management reporting objective. You have financials at a consolidated level, and you need to give your teams information they can use to manage their business. One of the biggest challenges with this project was the scope. From the highest level executives to the managers of individual teams, as well as our finance partners, the report had to scale and be actionable at every level of our organization. The design had to be simple enough to navigate with the ability to drill down on specific details. Now, at this point, in full transparency, I should mention that I'm not an expert in Power BI or DAX. This set of gross margin reports was my third Power BI project and only my second using DAX. Quite honestly, I was looking for a way to shortcut the development effort required to calculate multiple variances dynamically. In my research, there was no visualization better for P&L format than the Zebra BI tables, especially since we wanted to compare actuals against budget, forecast, and prior year data. Fortunately for me, Zebra has instructional videos and articles in their Resource Hub showing step-by-step instructions on exactly how to prepare a data model and implement these visualizations and high-impact features. I'm not ashamed to admit I watched many of these videos 2 and 3 times each and eventually figured out how to make the necessary changes to my own model to make it work. I'd love to tell you that redesigning these gross margin reports was a smooth process, but suffice to say it required a growth mindset. It was a messy, iterative process of redesigning mock-up slides and going back to the question of, so what? There's nothing quite like toiling away on a project that keeps you up at night and finally giving your stakeholders a sneak preview to have them say they don't understand what they're looking at. From experience, I can tell you, it's important to get out of the weeds often to check in with your customers. they can have the best ideas about how to present your data in a meaningful way. As we work together through the process, a few key points surfaced. So let's dive into the demo reports and I'll show you what I learned. For accessibility, I've chosen the colorblind friendly format in the zebra visual instead of the customary red and green. This makes it easier for people with visual impairments to distinguish the color contrast in the visual. The profit and loss visual takes front and center of this first page, showing the highest level executive view that includes a calculation of gross margin inside the table itself, as well as a calculated column that displays the percent of revenue for each line item, so we know which expenses are impacting our profit margin the most. The zebra table can be modified to show whichever variance columns are most relevant to your audience. See, I could have chosen any of these. But this landing dashboard for the executive level should have fewer variance columns for a clean presentation. At this level, I'm showing just the relative variance to budget as a graph. And as you can see here, I've customized the visual to show anything over 300 points as just a line to keep it clean. What's truly actionable about this visual is the custom tooltip. It shows a breakdown of the variances when you hover over it. I've chosen to show the budget variance. So when the user hovers over the variance, another chart pops up showing the breakdown as well as a description of the line item. The user doesn't have to click through the selections to see in a slicer to see what makes up the variance. It's highlighted for them, and look, it reconciles to the total. I love this feature. Okay, another feature, and this one's standard across all pages, is the navigation pane at the top. This is simply a button that captures all the report tabs and gives the ability to toggle between the pages in any order. That said, these report pages are displayed in order from highest to lowest level of detail. The Zebra BI cards reduces the number of slicers required with their cross-filter functionality. On the left, you can see the Zebra BI cards visual with a trailing 12-month gross margin trend and the calculated average by workload. These cards can be used to select one or many workloads to aggregate data in the P&L. So I can click on one and see the P&L here for just that one workload, or I can control click multiple cards to see the aggregated P&L. And I can do that for any of these workloads. So it looks like multiple cards are displayed, but this is just one card's visual. And the order of display can be set to show the highest impact workloads on top just by dragging the tiles. Okay, for time selection, there's the ability to view the selected fiscal period by quarter to date or year to date with the click of a button. Again, I learned how to implement selection controls from Zebra's Resource Hub. This quarter to date, year to date visual that looks like buttons is just a slicer set to horizontal orientation. The small multiples on the right is a Zebra chart that automatically scales to show trend for the highest cost lines by percent of revenue. The larger the impact, the larger the displayed graph. This makes it very clear which line item matters most because they're visually represented that way. Okay, finally, by clicking on the information icon, the user is taken through a tutorial overlaid on the same page. Oops. There we go. That highlights the various features and content. This is simply a construct of buttons with bookmarks designated as their action in the button settings. So I can click to the next step, show something else, a final step, and then know how to use the report. Navigating to the second page, we have operational detail. Notice more detail and selection criteria here. Give it a moment to load. Workload teams and finance partners can see historical data in a table format they recognize without too many different visuals on the page. They can select their division or workload or both and a monthly or quarterly trend view. These views can actually be changed by this slider. So you can scroll and get all the data you need. In this visual, we're showing year-over-year absolute difference, as well as the year-over-year relative variance in points. And if I click on the quarter view, it's very similar. But again, I've chosen different columns, variance columns to display, variance to budget, and then in the final quarter, variance to forecast as well. The third report provides further detail to the management level. This page is a breakdown of cost lines with scaled small multiple charts showing workloads that are the largest contributors and the historical trend of each. The chart dynamically adjusts to any cost line selected from the table on the left. So now you have a framework for report design and a beautifully optimized data model. How do you get started with building a dashboard on the blank page that you're looking at? Remember, the key to actionable reporting is understanding your business from the viewpoint of your customers. They need to know what actions to take, and your data should tell that story in a meaningful way. Don't just display the data in a series of colorful graphs. Play around with the visuals and consider what new insights can be gained that might be helpful to your audience. Keep your reports simple and scalable. Start with a presentation that's more visual, contains less information, but then allow the user to click once and get more details. Use color and spacing to help tell the story and guide the user's eyes to what they need to know. Use custom tooltips to get straight to the point. Then go back to the business and ask more questions to further refine your design. Of course, when you learn how to build your own reports with impactful business intelligence, make sure to share your knowledge with others. I hope this has been helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I think we have a couple minutes for maybe one or two questions from the audience before the Q&A.
Thank you, Rachel. This was very insightful, and thank you for sharing so practical insights into your reports and for showing them on the screen. So we have quite a few questions, and because we still have a few minutes left, like you said, is it okay if we just present those questions on the screen?
Of course.
So Ron was asking, how does the user know what to hover over, what to click on for more details? You did talk about this a little later after this question was already published. But maybe you can elaborate more on that.
Absolutely. So how does the user know how to use the report? That's a great question. And that's why we love to have an information icon or help menu at the top. The hover over functionality of Power BI reports is quite common. So users are quite familiar with hovering over a visual, but generally what they'll see is just a whole bunch more numbers. What's really actionable about this is this extra page that I've set up and designated as the tooltip destinations, so that these charts will aggregate the data depending on where my mouse is hovering. So if your users aren't as familiar with Power BI and that hover functionality, that's a good thing to put in your information help menu as well.
Do you also practice internal teaching, internal coaching when
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll do demo videos. It's great to just set up like a 5 or 10 minute demo video of how to use this report. People love those. It can be tricky if you're showing revenue data that maybe not everybody has access to. So sometimes you have to blur, but can be very helpful as well.
What exactly means workload in this context, and how is it calculated?
Yeah, so the workload is just that granular level that we were trying to get to. So our financials systematically didn't have gross margin at that workload level. And, our teams are structured in a way that you would have a manager who's leading a team, and they're spending money, but they're also earning revenue. And so the workload level is just sort of that lowest level that we needed to be able to manage our financial statements. And this is a demo, right? So it's been anonymized. So these aren't the terms that we use at Microsoft, obviously, but it's what seemed appropriate for this presentation.
Okay, thank you. This one is from Elena. Could you please explain how the I info button was created?
Yes, that's just, you go insert button, and it's one of the choices that you can choose as an icon, and then you just set the action of that button to a bookmark where you've set up all the visuals you want to have. So the first thing I have is a gray screen that overlays on top of all the visuals. And then I've got those yellow boxes that pop up in front of it. So that's just a construct of an initial information button as the icon, and then bookmarks with their actions set up to lead to each other. And that whole thing I learned on Zebra's Resource Hub. They've got articles and webinars about how to do that. And the first time I did it probably took me an entire day. But once you learn the process, it's fairly simple.
Rachel, thank you again for all of this, and we'll see you later in the sessions.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nasty.
Thank you.